Dear Venerable Sir, I suppose most of the beginners to meditation do not have any idea about the mind and what it is. If you could explain the meaning of mind, we consider it as a great meritorious deed.
Okay, that's a very humble statement, isn't it? You suspect that most people do not have any idea about what is mind. And unfortunately, I suspect that you might be correct. In our age, which is very materialistic, and because technologically developed, people are looking at things outside themselves a great deal. So, unfortunately, the more it seems that human beings develop things outside, unfortunately, they tend to be neglecting the inner world. And so it is very important to give some serious thought to this. What is the mind? And then obviously, how does one take care of it? So we have consciousness, and you have 6 sense bases. So consciousness is working at your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, your body, and in your mind. And then you have something. So the function of consciousness is actually to know. So ear consciousness knows hearing, eye consciousness knows sights, tongue consciousness knows taste, etc. And then the mind, using memory, past memory, is able to perceive and think. Fortunately for us, there's another aspect of the mind sense base that can be trained to know all of these things. So we're talking then about mindfulness, and in a way we're talking about the citta, mind, that which has the capacity to know sense-based experience. So Lord Buddha places a great deal of emphasis upon cultivating mindfulness, developing mindfulness for very good reason. So I think we need to start with, you have a body, rupa, you have mind, and then you have 6 sense bases. So the other thing then we need to consider or acknowledge is that unfortunately the normal state of an untrained mind is that it is affected by greed, hatred and delusion. So we need to acknowledge this. The reason it's affected by, I guess I'll ask you a question. I don't just want to preach, I want to have something of a dialogue. Does anyone in the room admit that they are affected by greed? Is that the case? Are any of you affected by greed? I'll ask another question. Have any of you completely abandoned all greed? Anybody? Nobody's nodding their head, but nobody said they were affected by greed either. Are you affected by irritation and aversion? Do you get angry sometimes? Has anybody gone completely beyond irritation and anger? No? Okay. So what is delusion? I think before we consider the question what is delusion, we have to consider the issue of ignorance. So Lord Buddha explains that it's because of ignorance to the actual nature of phenomena or conditions, sankhara, that delusion occurs. So what is ignorance? Ignorance is not knowing. Ignorance is not knowing. Because we don't know, and we'll talk a little bit later about what we don't know, we don't know things according to their true characteristic, which is impermanent, unsatisfactory and not self. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. Because we don't see things clearly, then we misperceive them. That's what delusion is. So ignorance is not knowing. Delusion is misapprehension, perceiving things incorrectly. So we have a body, we have a mind, we have 6 sense bases, and unfortunately we have ignorance and delusion. Because we're deluded, that's how the greed and the aversion gets to take a root. It has a place to live. Because we think we're a self, then there's things that we like and things that we don't like, things that we want and things that we don't want. When people train their mind very skillfully and effectively, and they have insights into the deeper reality, conventional reality, there is a self. In deeper reality, this body and mind is not self, anatta. When people have direct insight into this, and really see this clearly and really establish this insight, then there's no one to be greedy, and there's no one to be averse. And so this is a profound realization, and it takes serious training. And it starts with small insights, and it becomes bigger insights, and bigger insights become deep penetrative insights, and deep penetrative insights ultimately become mind transforming, world shattering insights. So the outside world doesn't shatter, but the way you perceive the world incorrectly, that gets shattered. So this is, Lord Buddha explains that to be able to have penetrative insight into truth, which will uproot delusion. See, the opposite of not knowing is knowing. The opposite of ignorance is truly seeing correctly as things are. And so that's why mindfulness is so important, because if you could see greed, hatred and delusion as being dark qualities that affect the mind, then you understand that mindfulness is like clear water. It's a clear quality. It's a direct antidote to the darkness. It literally washes away the darkness. Now when you can maintain mindfulness consistently through meditation, primarily through meditation, and then with a determination to maintain some awareness and clarity throughout your day, some presence of mind, then that mindfulness generates energy in the mind, because the mind isn't flowing out into ignorance and delusion. It's in the body and consistently maintained. It gets stronger, it gets more powerful, and that's what a large factor of what makes samadhi, concentration or collectedness, possible. And so when you have some stability of mind, to consider maintaining mindfulness consistently and having stability of mind, then this comes down also to the practice of generosity and sila, ethics. It's only an ethical person who can have a real quality of steadiness and stillness and collectedness, because if you have a good standard of virtue, you'll have freedom from remorse, freedom from regret, and you'll have a healthy kind of self-respect. But if you aren't a virtuous person, you'll tend to feel anxious, and you actually won't like your own company. When you come to sit meditation, you won't feel good about the non-virtuous things that you do. But we have to start where we are. And so this brings us to meditation training. The best way to learn about mind, I feel, the best way to learn about mind is through meditation. So the ordinary state of mind is one of pretty consistent thinking. And so one thought leads on to another thought, one thought leads on to another thought, and we have this sense of my thought, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. That's normal. The problem is our own thoughts delude us. And so when you come to meditate, there is going to be thinking, but you're changing your relationship to thinking. So when you come to meditate, you're just trying to see a thought as a thought, and you're not believing it, and you're not being the person thinking it, you're just aware that there is a thought. And rather than follow on with the thought, you try not to follow on with the thought. And you need to do something else when you do this. You need to give the attention to something else. So this is where mindfulness of breathing is very fundamental, central. It gives us a tool. It's always with us. Lord Buddha said that breath meditation is the crown jewel in the crown of all meditation practices. So in maintaining your awareness on the feeling of the breath, just knowing the feeling of the breath, then you're not giving the attention to the thoughts, and you're not creating a self around that. And what happens is that it's like having an eye in the storm, or an anchor in the sea, where you have a center. You don't get completely washed away, or you don't get completely blown around. You can rest in this space, and then you're able to see that thoughts arise, stay for some time, change, and cease. as does every breath, as does every feeling, as do our bodies, etc. So we try to practice generosity as a way of weakening our greed, but also as a way of learning how to let go, how to relinquish. This is very important because we're attached to our thoughts, we're attached to our preferences, we're attached to our opinions, and very deep attachments. And so this practice of training in giving away physical things, or giving away your time, giving away your skill, that helps us condition the capacity to put down a hindrance from your mind, to put down thoughts, to put down reactions. It's the same function. You're giving up material things, giving up your time, and as you train in meditation, you become capable of giving up a reaction or giving up a desire, watching these things arise in the mind, stay for some time and cease. And then as you progress in meditation, what should occur is that you will have the experience of a sense of presence, of a sense of clarity, something that knows, which isn't conceiving of a self. And when you begin to have insights into that, then you understand that self is something that you do, and it's a deep habit, it's a habitual assumption, but it's actually more like a way of seeing things, one possible way of seeing things, which Lord Buddha is saying is not actually correct. It's not the deeper truth. And so you can experience that in your own meditation. You can experience a sense of your body, a sense of senses, sounds, sights, but no sense of me meditating. And what happens is when you have that experience is that it's extremely peaceful. And Lord Buddha says about peace is that he says about the self-view that it's actually a kind of it's ill. That which we, the self in itself, self-view is a kind of a bad habit. It's not a healthy way of seeing things. And then it's burdensome. It's a very contracted, reactive position. And so having experiences where the self-view isn't as inflated in the mind, and where you experience pristine clarity, stillness, spacious awareness, fullness, contentment, then you see that not perceiving things as self is better. It's much less burdensome. That doesn't mean that you don't know how to relate to others in the world. Lord Buddha is an excellent example of that. Lord Buddha was a highly effective person. He laid down the monastic order. He knew the appropriate way to talk to royalty, to military, to rich people, to poor people. He understood conventions perfectly, and he didn't think he was a self. In fact, he knew he wasn't. So the more mindfulness and wisdom you develop, it's not that you don't understand how to use these things, but you know what they are. And Lord Buddha said about peace that it's the highest happiness. Peacefulness is the in Thai it's Kwam Sungok Bin Kwam Suk Pranit Tisut. It's the finest, most refined type of happiness. So this is also something that you won't know unless you seriously meditate. You won't know that peacefulness is better than the best meal. Peacefulness is better than the best sex. Peacefulness is better than a new car. You won't know that unless you have an experience. But when you do have an experience of experiencing your deeper potential to be truly content and peaceful and still, full of rapture, tranquility, serenity, these kind of qualities, when you do experience that, you'll have no doubts. This is definitely superior to the happiness that can come from fulfilling sensual desires and accumulating material things. So I've said a lot, and I think you have 18 questions, so I'm going to be quiet. And I hope what I said made some sense. What's the next question?
Dear Venerable Sir, when we keep watching the in-breath and out-breath, most of the time it is very difficult to pay our continuous attention due to the interference of many thoughts. How can we overcome this issue?
Yeah. So yes, for people who live busy lives, when you come to meditate, there will be a lot of thinking. And I don't know if you need to overcome it, but you need to change your relationship to it. So you shouldn't think that having thoughts when you come to meditate is a problem. But I do recommend meditating first thing in the morning. You'll tend to find that after having rested, if you go to bed at a sensible hour and get enough sleep, you probably don't need 8 hours, but you should get at least 6.5 or 7. If you have had a proper rest, then you get up, wash your face, brush your teeth, and come and sit meditation. Don't turn on your phone yet. Put it in another room, or put it on silent. Don't allow the mind to start picking up the world first thing in the morning, work and friends and all of that, family. Just give yourself that quiet time in the morning. You'll probably find there'll be less thinking. And then the value of this is that you're trying to generate a quality of clarity, a quality of mindful awareness that knows sounds, that just knows sensory experience and knows thoughts, knows that a thought is just a thought. And so if you have less of them, that's easier to do. So you're sitting meditation and you might find that you're able to be with 4 or 5 breaths, and then there's the first thought, oh, I have to do such and such. And then you can say to yourself, okay, suppose you're meditating for half an hour or 45 minutes, you can say to those thoughts, come back in 45 minutes. Okay, I'll deal with that later. And then what happens is, as you train your mind, at first the mind doesn't understand what you're doing. I mean, it's used to trying to make you happy in its deluded way. It's doing its best. It's trying to fulfill happiness. But when you experience, most people find with some meditation experience that suppose you're meditating for 45 minutes a day every day, that if you develop some skill, it might take 10 or 15 minutes where there's quite a bit of thinking at first, but then most people will experience 5, 10 or 15 minutes after that where things are fairly peaceful. So it's just a matter of sticking with it, not giving up on the task, but one has to have the intention not to pick up the thoughts, not to follow on with the thoughts. So you simply know, oh, there's a thought. And you say to yourself, okay, put that down, pick it up later. Sometimes it's a very useful thought. Sometimes you need to remember something, and you need to remember, okay, thank you, these kind of things. But what you'll learn when you meditate is how often you think the same thought, and how much time you give to. There might have been a traumatic experience in the past, or there might have been a wonderful experience in the past that you miss, and you'll see in your in your daily meditation practice how often you think about these things. And it really wastes a lot of time and energy, actually. And so what a skilled meditator can actually, recognize that you've thought a thought often enough. You can just say to yourself, don't need to think that anymore. It's the past. The past is gone. It's a mental cultivation, mental training. And for myself, I've had some past experiences where suppose I was very hurt or very disappointed, and a kind of a reaction comes up, and it's the usual thing, he shouldn't have done that, he should have done this, it's not fair, blah, 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 blah. And so what happened was, I was getting fed up with it. So I started to count the time I was having that thought, and it's like, and at a certain point you can say, and this also requires mindfulness, you need to know that's the 21st time I've thought that thought, that's the 22nd time I've thought that thought since you started counting. And then you suppose you get up to like 100 over a period of 3 weeks, or something like that, and I just say to that, I heard it, I get it, you were hurt, you were offended, drop it. But some people take this to their death. Some people, you have conversations with your parents and grandparents about the most traumatic experiences of their life, and they'll tell you the same story until they die. If they don't train in actually putting something down, forgive people, put the past behind you, the past is gone. But this is something you learn in meditation. You learn that the present is what you have. And if you know how to make your mind somewhat collected, you can enjoy it. But if you pick up the past and rehash it, you make yourself miserable. Or if you long after something that you can't have anymore, it really has gone, you also make yourself miserable. But this is something the mind needs to learn. It needs to see with enough clarity. Don't do that. Just be with this one in-breath. Just be with this one out-breath. You'll actually feel fairly content. You don't need that. So it's something that you learn through practice. So changing one's relationship to thinking. While you're meditating, you're not trying to think, but you're not trying to destroy thought either. You're just trying to know that a thought is just a thought, without following on with it. When you develop, if you have more time, suppose you're doing meditation retreats, or suppose you're semi-retired at some point and you decide to increase your meditation to 2 or 3 sessions a day, which I hope everybody does at some point. Then you'll start to use a reflective thought meditation, and you'll learn about how you can have a focused thought in the parameters of a reflection, which is very helpful. Then it's like you're learning how to use thought rather than being dragged around by it and beaten up by it. So you can actually use thought, and you can use thought to incline the mind into very peaceful meditative states. So but it requires a certain amount of mindfulness and a certain amount of discipline. But breath meditation, if one is consistent with breath meditation, it will give the mind that kind of capacity to focus. And so then you can actually, suppose you want to think about thoughts of loving kindness or thoughts of gratitude. The mind might be a bit depressed, or suppose you have an issue with resentfulness. You might think about the things that you're disappointed about, the people you're disappointed about. You start to feel sorry for yourself because that's what you're focusing on. And you can ask yourself, well, was anybody ever kind to me? And then you'll probably discover that lots of people have been kind to you on lots of occasions. And then you can decide, okay, well, let's just for this half an hour remember all the times that you can that somebody was kind to you. And so it's like using thought, and you can kind of balance your mind, instead of becoming a depressed, resentful person who feels sorry for themselves, because that's one of the places the mind will take us if we don't train it, is it can say, oh look, actually my mum was really nice to me on many occasions, my auntie was nice to me, my grandma was nice to me, my father was really generous towards me, various other things. This friend was really dependable. There are thousands of kind gestures by hundreds of people. And so you can do things like that, giving rise to a deep feeling of gratitude and recognizing, oh, my life's really blessed actually. So once you learn how to have focused, reflective thoughts, or you just decide, I'm going to have kind thoughts towards people. Sometimes you don't like somebody, but if you know how to think, one of the things Ajahn Chah says, and Ajahn Chah, our teacher's teacher, had particular gift in making complex teachings quite simple. And he says, you suffer because of wrong thinking. The first noble truth is suffering. And then there's a cause of suffering, and there's a path leading beyond suffering, a realization of the cessation of suffering. You suffer because of wrong thinking. So obviously elements of right view, healthy perspective are important in that statement. So if you know how to think correctly, you actually won't suffer very much. So suppose you don't like somebody and you want to have loving kindness towards them. Is it possible? It is actually. For example, all you need to ask yourself is, does this person suffer? And what you'll find is that sometimes the person that you really don't like is probably someone with a lot of negativity, some really horrible habits. Well, you can ask yourself, what do you think it feels like to be that person? You ask these questions, like really sincerely. What do you think it feels like to be a really mean person? What's their experience? Imagine being that person, walk a mile in their shoes. And ask yourself, would you like to be that person? You can ask other questions. What kind of karma do you think they're generating for themselves? What kind of experiences will they be having in their future? And you can actually give rise to a compassionate feeling of empathy. And then you can wish that person be well, be happy, be free from suffering. But it's simply a matter of knowing how to reflect, knowing how to use thought. And then, then you get in the realm of mastery. A person can learn how to use this body and mind, so that every experience, difficulties become the path, an opportunity to develop extra virtue. And But yes, in the beginning of meditation, you just try to see a thought as a thought, keep coming back to the breath, allow them to arise and cease. And even if there's a lot of thinking, suppose you don't follow along with that thought and another thought comes up, and you don't follow along with that when another one comes up, at least you're learning about the nature of thought, that it arises and ceases, and that it keeps changing. This is important, because an untrained mind will tend to identify with the thoughts completely and believe them. Now, suppose, for example, you decided to do something difficult, and at a certain point you want to give up, because you've had the thought, it's just too hard. I just can't do this. If you completely believe that thought, it's over. But if you know doubt is one of the hindrances, it arises, it stays for some time, it ceases, and you have that thought, like for example, when I first became a novice at the age of 23, 5 days out of 7 I wanted to disrobe. That was 23 years ago. So obviously I had some capacity to not believe my thoughts. The reason I didn't disrobe was because 2 days out of the 7, I was happier than I used to be. So there's a capacity to reflect. I knew, which I probably had from a past life, I suspect, a capacity to be able to reflect on thought and not believe them completely. At the age of 22, 23, that's not so common. But, and I don't know that many people that would have stuck it out for 5 days a week. I did have strong faith in Lord Buddha. I did trust this path. And I also knew that that quality of happiness that I had on average 2 days a week, I wouldn't have if I disrobed. Because I knew it was a result of having a higher level of virtue, and which I wouldn't have if I disrobed. So if I believe my thoughts, I wouldn't be here anymore. So developing an understanding of the nature of thoughts will make you a more effective person, because you have a choice to believe your doubt or not. And Ajahn Achalo explains how he used to train himself when he was, did a lot of strict and difficult practice. So working with pain in the body, these various things. And so the thought would come up, I just can't stand this for 1 more second. And then he'd count 1. And he was training his mind. No, I can't stand this any longer, not 1 more second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's just not believing the thought, not believing the reaction, not giving in. And you learn about the nature of thoughts. And you have a capacity to use them when they're skillful, believe them when they make sense, and ignore them and not follow them when they're not wise. So all of this comes simply from being consistent with daily practice. A lot of benefits.
Dear Venerable Sir, I'm a very beginner to meditation. Please advise me, what are the basic techniques of meditation suitable for a beginner?
Yeah. So I think, talk about three basic, four types of meditation. I could talk about this for an hour, but I'm going to try to keep it succinct. So breath meditation. Breath meditation, as I said, Lord Buddha said, it's the crown jewel in the crown of meditation, suitable for all characters. It's the wonderful, I'll just say a few things that are wonderful about breath meditation. The first thing that's wonderful about breath meditation is the breath is with you all the time. So you have your meditation object there. So that might mean you're in a traffic jam, you're on an aeroplane, you can't sleep. You might find yourself with a period of time that's not formal meditation, but you realize I have time to be with my breathing at the moment, and you can keep checking in with this meditation object. That's very helpful. And then the other thing that's great about breath meditation is it will help you to recognize the texture of your mental experience. Suppose you have an agitated mind state, that will affect the breathing. So sometimes you might not realize you're agitated, you do your breath meditation and you realize the breath is agitated, and it's like, oh, I'm in an agitated state. And then you can use the breath to pacify. You can breathe a bit more slowly or breathe a bit more deeply and kind of try to, on the out breath, put things down. Exhale, put it down, put it down. Another thing that's wonderful about breath meditation is that when your mind, your meditation becomes more peaceful, the breath becomes more refined. So you actually have to attenuate your mindfulness to become more subtle as the breath becomes more subtle, and that it inclines the mind into more and more peaceful states. So they work very nicely together. You can train your awareness. As your breath becomes more refined, you refine your awareness. As your awareness becomes more refined, your breath becomes more subtle. And you might, in very, very peaceful mind states, it appears that the breath stops because it becomes so subtle, the mind's so peaceful. And then you just keep the awareness where you are watching the breath, and then the breath comes back, the perception of the breath comes back. But it's a wonderful meditation method. Then I think we all need loving kindness, metta meditation. So we do have this self-view, we do have this experience of thinking we're a self that thinks this body and these thoughts and these things are ours. And it's a pretty painful experience with a lot of challenges. Being born, you have aging, you have sickness, you have death, you have association with the disliked and separation from the liked. That's everyone's experience. We all have to deal with these things sometimes. You have pain. You just sit on a cushion for a certain amount of time, it's going to get painful. And so in the process of developing insight into not-self and going beyond perceiving yourself, the body and mind as a self, you have to have goodwill towards it. You have to have loving friendliness. And if we want to have loving kindness towards other people, it really has to start in the heart. It really has to start with oneself, because that's the space from where you radiate it outwards. And so breath meditation you can use in conjunction with loving kindness meditation. When we do the guided meditation, we'll do it. For example, you just breathing in, you're aware of the breath, but you make the wish, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. And you train in giving rise to this very wholesome emotion, this skillful altruistic wish, and then you radiate that space in the heart and chest area with the warmth of metta, maitri, loving kindness, goodwill, sometimes called unconditional love. So suppose you're going to meditate for 45 minutes or half an hour, I would actually recommend spending the first 5 to 10 minutes doing metta, because this is a way of using thought, placing it on a wholesome object. The mind's less likely to wander off in scattered thoughts. So it's thoughts of loving kindness. They also produce good karma. So we're all interested in producing punya, making merit. So mental cultivation produces more powerful types of merit than offering physical things, for example. And so it's beneficial. But Lord Buddha says one of the benefits of loving kindness practice is one who develops loving kindness, their mind becomes peaceful easily. So you want to experience some peacefulness when you meditate. If you cultivate loving kindness, your mind will become peaceful more easily, more quickly. You also, Lord Buddha explains, you don't have bad dreams, not likely to die in a horrible way, more likely to die in a peaceful way, likely to be reborn as a deva, etc. So there are many benefits. Another one, these balance each other. So another one is awareness of death and impermanence. And so it's helpful to be aware that we could die today. It's just helpful. It gives our life a healthy context. You know, how much importance do you give things? So in this day and age, it's not just materially developed. We have what's occurring with technology and information technology. Things that weren't important a decade or two ago can take on tremendous significance. For example, a high school student that gets bullied on Facebook, gets so depressed about it, commits suicide. I mean, these things have taken on quite a reality for people. And you know, for an objective observer, you might think, well, that's just stupid. Why would anybody take Facebook comments on Facebook seriously? But unfortunately, they do. And so, the reason I say that is, when you look at what you do in your day, what are you giving your attention to, and how much importance are you giving it? And if it was really quite possible that you were dying today, would you give that much time and attention to it? It helps us to decide where we'd rather invest our energy, what we'd like to give our attention to. So, suppose you were going to die in a month. Suppose you have a month. Would you answer all your line messages, your WeChats, your Viber? Would you check your Facebook? Would you upload your Facebook? Or would you meditate more and try to brighten your mind and prepare for your rebirth? I think we know the answer. And of course it is possible. It really is possible. And so death meditation balances it. So then the question comes, when is it appropriate? So suppose there's like really full-on desire, out-of-control desire. You really, really, really want this thing. And your mind's not becoming peaceful because it's obsessed. That might be the time to ask, well, if you died today, would you still want this? If you knew you were going to die today, would you still want this? And the question usually is, the answer usually is, well, no. Okay, well, you might die today. It's just a kind of a helpful reflection. And then if the mind's stubborn, won't accept that, sometimes you have to think of the ways that you might die today. And just ask yourself, is it possible that a car crashes into me? Is it possible, I don't want to say it, but it does happen these days and age, is it possible that somebody has a bomb strapped to them that walks into the room? Unfortunately, it's possible. It's not very likely, but it is possible. One has to accept this is a possibility now. Is it possible that the plane that I catch crashes? Of course it's possible. And more likely to have a car accident. Ajahn Achalo and I live in Thailand, and I think we have the second highest road accident fatality in the world. So I do this reflection on the fact that we might die in a car fairly often, and one has to be ready. So just in case. So breath meditation, loving kindness meditation, awareness of death and impermanence, and I think another one is recognizing one's good fortune. So if you start to get depressed, and if you start to feel really sorry for yourself, you're probably losing a healthy sense of context and a sense of perspective. Because among human beings, you're very fortunate. And sometimes we need to do a little bit of reflection. And compared to a child born with HIV in India, compared to someone born in a war zone whose father died when they were 3. You know, a lot of people in the world are in these kind of dire, terrible, challenged circumstances. Kids who are born to both parents who are drug addicts, kids who are born as drug addicts. There's whole, in America now, is hospitals have to have units to help the babies that are born to parents who are heroin or fentanyl addicts. So it's like, you don't have to do this daily, but it's like strong medicine if you need it. If you start to feel too sorry for yourself and forget how fortunate you are, sometimes you have to have a look around and see how bad it is for other people and recognize the opportunities that you have and use them skillfully. So those 4 meditations, I would say, are quite helpful. But as a daily practice, I think the first 5 to 10 minutes, loving kindness. And with loving kindness, you start with yourself, you move on to another person who it's easy to have loving kindness towards, then you move on to people that you feel no particular affection or non-affection for, and eventually you include difficult people as well. So it's very important to go through those various stages.
Yeah, Venerable Sir, before starting to do the meditation, is it required to practice yoga to train our mind?
No, it's not necessary to practice yoga, but I do recommend some, because to get your hips more flexible. So one of the reasons Sri Lankans struggle with the sitting posture is because they have very tight hips and their knees stick up like that. So if you have loose hip bones, you don't have to pull the body up like that and it's less tense. But there are particular exercises to do that. I think it's called the butterfly, where you're pressing down on your knees and you loosen up those hips. If you can get your hip joints loose, it's much, much easier to sit on a cushion. And I started like that. When I first did my first 10-day retreat, it was exactly like that. And they do stretch. And I think just for general health, I think there will be less thinking. So if you want to do a couple of, Surya Namaskar, salute sun salutations before your sitting posture, you'll probably find that you'll have less thinking, you'll be more in your body. So certainly it's helpful. It might be a matter of how much time you have, but if you can set aside 10 minutes for yoga and then 45 minutes for meditation, you're going to have a healthier body and mind, and you will benefit. So.
Dear Venerable Sir, during the technique of breath awareness meditation, should we take the breath consciously or see the natural process of breathing?
Yeah, just allow I think the first few breaths you can breathe a bit more deeply. When practicing breath meditation, the question was, do you control the breath or do you just observe the breath? So breathe deeply a few times, consciously breathing out tension on the out breath, and then allowing the breath in its natural state, as natural as possible, interfering with it as little as possible, just being aware of it as it is and as it changes from breath to breath. Yeah, very important actually, because if there's a sense of self-controlling the breathing, that awareness of the natural breath as it is won't arise. So, and it's a very helpful way in learning how to let go of trying to control everything. Don't control this, just be here and allow the body to breathe. Yeah.
Dear Venerable Sir, I would like to know the process of practicing metta meditation and how it helps to overcome anger, frustration and resentment.
Yeah. So it's kind of like replacement by opposites. And the question is, how does one develop loving kindness, and how does it help to overcome irritation, anger, resentment? So you're not going to get those kind of results after practicing it 2 or 3 times. But what happens is, if you have a daily practice and you are really cultivating thoughts of loving kindness, feelings of loving kindness for 5 to 10 minutes every day, what's going to happen is it's going to become a response that you are skilled at, something that you know how to do. And for people who cultivate a lot of metta, that actually becomes the default reaction. It's like, I for myself been cultivating metta for about 25 years. My normal response will be to treat somebody with kindness and to give them opportunities and chances. And sometimes I have to talk to myself about the fact that you need to be really firm with this person on this occasion. So now I actually have to train myself to be firm and express a little bit of irritation because if somebody's doing something inappropriate and I'm the abbot of the monastery, I have to be responsible. Then at certain times you have to set boundaries, admonish people, sometimes discipline. But it's become a kind of a default for myself now to have the kind response first, and I have to actually think about how to set a boundary or how to be fierce. And so it works. In my own experience, I can see that it's very effective. But I spend the first 5 to 10 minutes of every meditation session, and I would normally do 4 or 5 meditation sessions a day on average. So that's a lot of familiarization with metta. But it's the things that we pick up are the things that we're making karma with. So how many times you pick up anger and irritation and resentment in a day, but if you train yourself to pick up loving kindness instead, it's an antidote force, it's a balancing, and it's a replacement by opposite. The time that you're thinking thoughts of loving kindness, you're not thinking thoughts of irritation, resentment, and sometimes when you are feeling irritated and resentful, that's the time to have loving kindness for oneself, because what happens when you cultivate loving kindness is you'll find that your heart area becomes more sensitized, and you become more aware when you're irritated and when there's a feeling of resentment, because you recognize the way it works is kind of like, ouch, ouch, that hurts. So if you get used to holding a warm, loving, pleasant, Lord Buddha refers to the Brahma Viharas as divine abidings. So it's like a heavenly-like state to truly have loving kindness held in the mind. And so if you get familiarized with that, when something else comes in at place, you notice. And so what you can do then is recognize, oh, here is one being. May I be well, may all beings be well. May I be happy, may all beings be happy. You recognize, here is one being that's not happy. Here is one being that's suffering. Oh, may I be well, may I be happy. May I be well, may I be happy. And you can wash away an irritated, angry, resentful response with loving kindness. But it does require, it's like a muscle. It requires that that muscle has some strength. You need to be able to pick this tool up and apply it. But it does develop momentum through repetition and daily commitment. So.
Dear Venerable Sir, what is the meaning of mindfulness meditation? How does it practice? Can we practice it while working at the office environment?
Yeah. So mindfulness is, I think, best defined as awareness. And so I think before talking about mindfulness meditation, I think it's really important that people acknowledge that yes, you have some mindfulness, but most people's mindfulness is what I would call cloudy, fuzzy, scattered, weak mindfulness. And I know that that doesn't sound very nice, the Ajahns being a bit that might sound condescending, but it's, if you understand what real mindfulness, so if you understand what good mindfulness is, what a good quality of mindfulness is, that will help you to understand when you have a little bit of mindfulness. And so in Thailand, a lot of modern meditators, we have this somewhat annoying phenomenon where people come and tell me, I don't meditate because my whole life is a meditation. I practice meditation in every posture. And I'm like, really? And so I'm not saying that they don't have some awareness, some vague awareness of what they're doing, but if I were to ask them, and when you're irritated, are you able to let go of your irritated response in that moment? Are you able to not give rise to anger? Are you able to not follow your desire? Or are you mindful as you have the second brownie, the second cappuccino? Are you mindful as you're scolding your child or your husband, or making that nasty comment on YouTube or whatever? And the answer is yes, they have weak, fuzzy mindfulness as they do many unskillful things. And so if you want, it's important to understand that through the act of formal meditation, that's how you clarify, distill, refine, strengthen your mindfulness, by giving mindfulness the opportunity to work with one object, for example, the breath. So yes, you can be mindful throughout the day while you're working, but you do have to generate that mindfulness so that you can apply it. So this is why I was saying it's good to do the meditation in the morning, and then you get a sense for having a sense, yeah, thought's just a thought, a feeling is just a feeling, body's just a body, and I'm going to carry this clarity and this sense of perspective with me into the office. And suppose your boss is nasty, I'm sure in Viswa Parami that's not the case. I think you are fortunate. I think your bosses are probably very nice people. But there usually is the case that there's some annoying people at work. It's still the human realm. So that one that irritates you, that one that's going to say that thing you know they're going to say. Now if you have mindfulness, you won't react. And if you have really good mindfulness, you'll have a choice. How might I react? How might I respond? When would be the best time to respond? Maybe it's not skillful to respond at all. This is a good quality of mindfulness. You know, when you really have presence of mind. And oftentimes, in situations of conflict, oftentimes you realize it's better not to say anything. And just don't react. You realize that that's his problem, that's her problem. I'm going to do my duty, but I'm not going to pick up their issue. and I'm not going to react, and I'm going to do my job. And just, you know. So yes, I mean, it's wonderful if one trains in mindfulness and one does, because another thing is walking meditation. That's probably another important meditation to mention. When you do your walking meditation, you're focusing on the feelings at the bottom of the feet. You lift the foot, and we use these syllables, buddho. Buddho means knowing, mindfulness, awareness, awaken. Lifting the foot, aware of the feelings as the pressure releases, bud. Placing the foot, do, buddho, buddho. Same with the breath, breathing in bud, breathing out do. It gives us a skillful way to use some thought, restraining thoughts. But what happens is if you have a daily practice, you'll find that it becomes automatic that when you get up from your office chair and you're going to the bathroom, or you're going to get a coffee, or you're going to take a paper or a book or a folder to another desk, you'll feel your footsteps as you're going. And when your boss is talking, if you've practiced breath meditation enough and you're listening, you'll also be able to feel your in-breath and you're able to feel your out-breath. So when you know how to sustain and maintain mindfulness by using awareness of feelings in the body, yes, you can train in mindfulness. It will bring you a lot more clarity throughout your day, and memory tends to get better as well, because you were paying attention. You remember what they said. And someone might say, you remember when you said this? No, I didn't say that. I actually said this. You remember. I've got a very good memory myself for what I said and for what other people said. And sometimes people say to me, you said this and I said that. And I said, no, actually, you said this and I said that. And they're like, oh yeah. That's a result of mindfulness. It's sometimes translated in Thai as right recollection, and delusion is sometimes translated as forgetting. So mindfulness is recollecting what should be recollected, your sense of presence and sense of awareness. So yes, meditate before work and then maintain your mindfulness throughout the day. And you can develop a lot of interesting insights, and actually life and work becomes more interesting, because when you're not just reacting blindly in the old habits, and you begin to notice your reactions, and you begin to have choices about whether or not you demonstrate or how you react, life becomes more interesting. You're not just being pushed around by all these impulses, and you can start to be creative with responses. So.
Dear Venerable Sir, I have observed that it is very difficult for me to keep sitting in the cross-legged position with the body erect for more than 5 minutes due to an acute pain in the knees and ankles. Are there any exercises to get used to these sitting postures?
Yes. So that forward bend is one, and the butterfly stretch, where you put the soles of the feet together and you press your knees downwards. But it's good to go to a yoga class and get some instruction, because there are ways to breathe while you're doing that. There's a warm up. You know, if it's really the case that you can't sit for 5 minutes without getting irritated, I think it is good to go and do some yoga classes and learn how to stretch. But these cushions, you're sitting on nice cushions, ordered from Australia apparently. So lovely deep aqua color. So when you lift the back part of your bottom up like that, that does take a lot of pressure off having to try to hold the body in an upright position. So that would help. Most people can manage 15 minutes on this kind of setup. But if you want to be able to sit for longer, stretching your hip joints and doing it every day. So you do a couple of Surya Namaskar and do some butterfly and some forward stretches, and then do your sitting. But the other thing, which is very important to understand, the way you get a capacity to sit with pain and to sit for longer is simply by doing it. But suppose you get irritated after 10 minutes, so then I would say you should sit for 15. And then once you've got used to it, so okay, I'm sitting for 15 minutes for a month, you'll find that it gets easier. The mind gets used to things. There's all sorts of things you have to do in life that you don't like, but because you have to do it, you do it. And so the thing about meditation is you might not like sitting with pain, But at least there are rewards. There will be those days where it's peaceful. There will be those days where there wasn't that much pain. And counting the breath is helpful. So when you get to that point where I can't stand it any longer, you say, okay, we'll take 10 more breaths. Natural breaths, not and like one in breath or one out breath. Count them. And what is often the case is that after 10 breaths there's less pain. It's a very interesting thing to see. And you go, okay, we'll sit for a bit longer. And that comes back again, okay, well 10 more breaths. And then if you really can't stand it any longer, okay, change postures. But in terms of learning to meditate for longer, I want you to sit for half an hour, that would be my preference. So after sitting on the floor for 15 minutes, then get up and sit on the chair. So have your chair next to you or behind you, and you mindfully, slowly sit into the chair and continue to do your breath meditation for another 15 minutes in the chair while you're learning to sit longer. So, and for people who are elderly or their body just really won't allow, chair is fine. It's better to sit in a chair than not to sit. It's better, so yeah.
When I keep on meditation, I usually feel sleepy. But before the meditation, I don't have any feelings in the nature. Why is this?
Okay.
Is it because of the wrong method being applied or any other?
What time do you meditate, may I ask? Normally, what time do you meditate?
The metta meditations,
What time do you meditate? What time of the day?
either morning or
Morning
night.
time.
Yes.
At work, is it? Yes. Okay. So, with meditation, there are what is called 5 hindrances to meditation. Lord Buddha referred to the 5 hindrances as being like robbers or bandits, qualities that steal peacefulness from the mind. Sloth and torpor, sleepiness, is one of them. So part of it for modern people is that you might have become accustomed to, attenuated to being entertained. So it's like if you're looking at your phone a lot and your mind is used to being distracted or engaging with things consistently, then it's going to have to learn a new skill, how to pay attention to something which is subtle and not entertaining. And actually it's very rewarding and pleasant once you know how to do it. But so you have to try to be interested. But I think loving kindness might help you. So the question was, she's very sleepy whenever she sits meditation, but if she doesn't sit meditation, sleepiness isn't a problem. So it is one of the hindrances, and people will have, so just to go through those briefly, craving for things, the sensual things, you sit down, I want my cappuccino, or I want this. Aversion, irritation, I don't want to sit, it's too painful. Then there's restlessness and worry, sloth and torpor, there's the sleepiness, and then there's doubt. So it's important to know this basic list of 5 qualities, because you'll see that a lot of what comes up, that's that one, that's that one, and it will help you to not get lost in it. During this period that you're meditating, don't waste time. Lord Buddha says these are robbers, these are bandits, these are stealing your peacefulness, so don't give them the attention. Don't allow them in. And Luang Por Chah uses the analogy of a chair. Your mind is like a chair, and you don't allow these guests. There are guests coming in and out of the mind. You don't allow these things a place to sit down. You place your awareness in the chair, and sensual craving might come in, but you don't allow it to take over. It's like, hi, bye. It's like, I'm here. The same with irritation and aversion, restlessness and worry, doubt, and sleepiness. So, may I be well, may I be happy. Give the mind something to do. May I be well, may I be happy. And or gratitude, think of people you're grateful for. And but giving interest. So one of the things that helps the mind to wake up is giving interest, or an attitude of caring. So it's like, okay, can you care for the breath? Can you be really interested in it? It seems, when you don't have very good mindfulness, the breath isn't interesting at all. But when your mindfulness gets better, you'll notice that every single breath is different. And there's a beginning and there's a middle and there's an end and there's a space. And then there's a beginning and a middle and an end and a space of an out-breath. And every single breath is different. And if you get interested in those differences and really give it attention, the breath meditation gets more and more blissful and more and more peaceful as the mind really rests with it. So giving interest, giving care, and using reflective meditations to wake the mind up if it needs it. So, yeah.
Dear Venerable Sir, when I keep on meditating, I see some colors and lights, and I can clearly hear the sounds and feel fully aware of what is happening around. What is this state? Is this the state of samadhi or any primary indication of awakening the klesha or defilements?
Seeing the bright lights, flashes of bright light in meditation? Is that the question? While you're still aware of sounds, you can see flashes of bright light. So what I think is occurring, many people have not everybody does, but many people have the experience of when their mind begins to become peaceful, they'll often see flashes of bright light, oftentimes white or yellow, or white or gold, sometimes orange, sometimes purple, from what I've heard. So what I actually think you're seeing is your mind's own radiance. So the mind affected by hindrances is dark, but the mind that begins to collect becomes radiant. So the mind is turning away from sense bases and turning inwards. In the process of turning away from the world and turning away from sense contact and turning inwards, the mind becomes more radiant. Well, you can see this when you go to a meditation retreat. The meditators' faces get bright after a few days. And after the meditation retreat, everybody looks radiant. So minds get more radiant when they have more mindfulness and more concentration. So that's what I think is occurring. And the best thing to do is just don't worry about it. It's just like seeing. So if you're mindful of sights, mindful of that light, you're mindful of candlelight, and okay, it's just a different type of light. Your eyes are closed. It's the same thing. It's eye consciousness, but it's more subtle. So you're just aware of seeing, but not to be interested. And when the mind gets peaceful and you can still hear sounds, it's a very, very interesting thing to notice. Is there's not a sense of somebody listening. There's just sounds. Very peaceful. And then if some people find that as their mind concentrates more, that color can become like a stable block that isn't flashing, that's just quite still in front of in that area. And that's a good sign. At the same time, you don't get fascinated with it, you're just aware of it. So, and you continue to be aware of the breathing. So.
Dear Venerable Sir, I am a beginner to meditation. When I meditate, I feel during the meditation my thought process get very sharpened, so that without concentrating on anapana, that means inhalation and exhalation, I tend to think more and more. Very good ideas come into my mind.
Yes.
Hence, now I am fond of thinking rather than concentrating on ana and pana when I do meditation. Please advise me.
Yeah. So this is Mara entering through the mind sense door. So the experience was when it comes time to meditate, more inspiring thoughts and good ideas about things, and the person takes the opportunity to, finally you're giving yourself time to think clearly, so you can have some good ideas or you can solve some problems, but it's not the time. So, many people have this experience on retreats as well. Like halfway through the retreat, they're starting to get some good results, and then they realize they've got some great new idea for a new business, and they start planning their business, and they finally realize how they're going to resolve that problem with that person, and there's some validity to, yes, a mind with more clarity has a better quality of thought, has some good ideas, but one actually has to be quite firm with it, saying, no, this isn't the time for thinking. This is the time for seeing thoughts as thoughts. And if it's like you're a CEO and you have a secretary. There's these different voices in your mind. So here comes this good thought from the secretary, and you're the CEO, and you say, great thought, get back to me with that. Take a note. I'm interested in that one, take a note and get back to me. So it's like you're not dismissing the fact that it was a good thought, but you're saying, now's not the time. And it works. Like, it does come back. If when you have some presence of mind and some clarity, you say, okay, that's an interesting thought, I'm taking a note of that, I'm going to pick that one up. You can pick it up in half an hour, and then think it through with the clarity that you got from the meditation. But if you find that you're finding it valuable to have time to think clearly, make some time in your day for thinking, and possibly after the meditation session. So it's like, you're going to meditate for half an hour, then give yourself 15 minutes by yourself to think a few things through. Pencil in some time for yourself to have some wise, inspiring, intelligent thoughts. So.
Dear Venerable Sir, can you please describe the samadhi and dhyana state? Are they two different things, or do represent only one meaning?
Samadhi and jhanic states. So jhanas are types of samadhi. Personally, I like the way my own teacher, Tanajananand, talks about samadhi. He doesn't talk about the jhana, only the jhanas being samadhi. He talks about kanika samadhi, upajara samadhi, and then apana samadhi. It's all samadhi. And I personally prefer the word collectedness, right collectedness, than concentration. And so when you are able to sustain your mindfulness on one object for a period of time, right collectedness is the result. So because you're not picking up other objects, this is the factors of jhana, vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekagata. So the vitaka is placing the mind on the object. Then the vichara is simply just staying on that object, absorbing by not picking up other objects. The result of that is rapture, mental rapture, tranquility. That's the piti and the sukha. And then if you're able to deepen, if you understand rapture and tranquility, rapture is like waves on top of the ocean. Your mind becomes like vast, peaceful space. The tranquility is when it goes deeper, deeper beyond the waves. You're diving in deeper into peacefulness. That's the tranquility or the serenity. And then if one is able to stay very, 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 very still, the mind can experience a jhanic state, the first jhana, for example. But it's all samadhi. And so I think somebody said many people here are at the beginning stages. So what your experience might be is that in a half an hour meditation, the mind becomes peaceful for a couple of minutes, and then it has some wandering thoughts, and then it might become peaceful for 5 and 10 minutes. And so that's in the area of kanika samadhi. It's called momentary samadhi, but it is good. Nobody's going to get jhana by sitting down and deciding to do jhana. That's not how it works. What happens is that the more that you're able to experience the momentary concentration, then you'll experience that for deeper periods, and that's what they call the upajara samadhi. Upajara samadhi, neighborhood concentration, means it's touching on the jhana. The way to know that it's upajara samadhi is that there will be few thoughts, and the thoughts tend to be wholesome. So it's a nice thought, a good thought, with some space in between, but the mind's feeling contentment and fullness, coolness. Then apparently among upajara there is a coarse, an intermediate, and a refined. So the upajara state can be very, very peaceful, and it's very, very wholesome, and it's still not jhana. But for myself, I don't find it helpful to try to get jhana, and I don't find it helpful. There's not going to be a signpost either. It's not going to be something pop up in your mind and say, congratulations, that's the first jhana. If that does happen, I'd be worried. So all you need to know is that you need to be mindful of the breath. And then you need to maintain the consistency, and then peacefulness will arise. And peacefulness is good. When peacefulness arises, try to deepen the peacefulness. When stillness arises, try to stay still for as long as possible. That's all you need to know. Then that peacefulness will gain power, momentum, and it will become jhana. And it'll do it in its own time. But consistent effort, not too much desire mind, not too much craving, a quality of contentment for the amount of peacefulness that you actually have, these are very important factors for bringing about that jhanic absorption. So unfortunately in this day and age a lot of people overestimate themselves as well. They think they have jhana when they may not, and that can be problematic. So I think one of the ways to, it's kind of a disaster in spiritual practice if you're trying to get rid of a sense of self, trying to be special, and then you believe that you have something that you don't have, and you think you're special because of your spiritual practice. It's adding more conceit on top of a problem. We already have that problem. So an attitude of contentment, patience, consistent effort, and then trust as well, like trusting the path, trusting your good intentions. That's where it will go. But you don't need to tell anybody, and you don't need to tick it off, and you don't need to be in a hurry. Just bring your mind to whatever state of collectedness it will come to, be content with it, keep practicing, and that samadhi will deepen and deepen. This day and age, it's rare to find individuals, very rare, to find individuals who have more than the fourth jhana. So there's eight jhanas. The fifth, sixth, seventh and eighth are what's called arupa jhanas. If a person truly has a fourth jhana, they'll often have psychic powers. So this is where samadhi can go. So a person with fourth jhana, it's quite common that they can read the thoughts of another, they can recollect past lives, that kind of thing. If you start to have fifth, sixth, seventh and eighth, that's when a person can levitate, swim in the earth, walk on water, those kind of things. It really does happen if a person has those abilities. But normally it's the case for somebody like a rishi, somebody in the mountain who has enormous amounts of time to cultivate very, very profound steadiness and one-pointedness, where they get mastery over the four elements. And there still are some people, but it's more and more rare. So I think I know only of one person in Thailand who has more than the fourth jhana, and I know several people with fourth jhana who do have psychic powers. So I've got this tray of amulets in front of me that I'm going to give away. Some of these masters have the ability to put their metta jhana, the energy of their metta jhana, into an object, so that the merit and the protective quality of their metta can help you. If you have sila. You do need to have sila also. And there are examples of people walking away from car accidents with no scratches because they were they were wearing one of these things. They do appear to be able to help. So,
Dear Venerable Sir, how can we shift from the samatha meditation to vipassana meditation? How long will it take for a beginner to practice vipassana meditation?
yeah. I hope you guys have a couple of hours. Yeah. Putting me through the hoops, Ajahn. Explain the jhanas, explain samatha and vipassana. So I'm going to try to keep it a little bit simple. It's actually not complicated. Luang Por Chah said that samatha and vipassana are one branch. One branch that is, suppose you're picking up a branch from the ground. One side is samatha, one side is vipassana. You can't really separate them. If you don't have a branch without both of them. So this, now I'll try to give some examples. Suppose you come to meditate and your mind becomes peaceful. Great. We all like to experience some peacefulness. So you don't need to interfere with that. Just allow the mind to be with the feeling of the breath and to experience some collectedness, some radiance and contentment. But what you'll find is that it will always move from that state. And this is the time to do some investigation. Investigative meditation is not vipassana. Vipassana means insight. Vipassana is the result of investigative meditation. Vipassana is not a method. This is important to understand. So your mind became a little bit peaceful. It moved from its peacefulness. Now it's time to investigate. What should you investigate? Okay, you notice there's some knee pain. Now you have some energy, you have some clarity. Notice the way those feelings constantly change. Is it one solid feeling throbbing, or is it millions of little feelings changing? Okay, you'll notice that it's millions of little feelings changing. Really have a close look at that. Similarly with any emotion, even any thought actually has a feeling in this area, in the area of the citta. Any of the hindrances, so you've had a peaceful meditation, you'll come out, some of the hindrances will start to come back. Some restlessness, or some desire, or some aversion. There's a feeling there. These are energies in the mind. So it's like, okay, where is that feeling? What does it feel like? And then the way that you develop vipassana is noticing the trilakkhana, the three characteristics. So suppose you just decide, okay, I'm going to contemplate impermanence of feelings. So that might be a feeling in the body associated with, what appears to be physical pain, or a feeling in the heart area which is related to some kind of emotion. So observe it. You still be aware of the breath. You're aware of the breath broadly, but you're also having a look at this feeling. Being determined to notice that it changes, and being determined to notice that it ceases. And this is what becomes vipassana. Is like when with some stability and clarity you truly see cessation, and then the feeling of self disappears from the mind, and there's a sense of clarity. It's like self is based on the delusion of permanence. So what happens is when the mind really has a penetrative insight into impermanence, that thing just falls away because it's not true. And the mind really sees impermanence. When it sees impermanence, it has an experience of not self. And sometimes you want to be peaceful and the mind won't be peaceful, so that's a time to do some investigation. If there's a lot of desire, or if there's grief, or if there's sadness, it's like, go to that feeling. What does that feel like? Still using the breath, just ask, where is that feeling? Is it changing? Sometimes investigative meditation can incline the mind to peacefulness, because you are still keeping the investigation within the parameters of the body and the mind, so you're not letting it flow out into sense contact, etc., thoughts about the past or the future. So you just go, okay, where is that feeling? What does desire feel like? Where is it? Another thing that is an important part of practice is to investigate not self. So we hear, it's not self, it's not self, it's not self, but yet we have this feeling. And if someone insults me, I'm upset. If someone praises me, I feel happy. So what is that? Okay, there is a self here. Conventionally speaking, it's my bad habit. But what you can do is that you can ask yourself, well, where is it? Where is it exactly? Because it causes a lot of problems. So you want to know where it is. What's it doing? Then we were talking about the six sense bases. It sounds a bit silly, but it's very important that we do this, and it's very important that we do it sincerely. But you need your daily meditation practice as the foundation. That's what's going to give the mind the integrity to do these investigations. But you really ask yourself, is myself in my eyes? Is the self in my ears? Closing your eyes, trying to be aware of your breath, and then you send the awareness to the ear sense space. No self there. Okay, well, is the self in the nose? No. But there is this phenomena of I like that sight, I don't like this sight, I like that sound, I don't like this sound, I like that smell, I don't like this smell. What about taste? Is myself in the tongue? No. Okay, well, is it in the body? Body sense base. Well, have a look. Is it in the hair? You have to be very sincere. Closing your eyes, having a look. No, it's not. Well, is it in the nails? No. Is it in the teeth? No. Okay, is it in the skin? We're very obsessed with skin. We get very upset when it sags and droops, when it gets wrinkles, when it gets pimples. Terrible. Well, is the self there? Is the self in the skin? Have a look. Can you find it? What happens if you do this sincerely is that feeling of being a self can just disappear. Because it's like you're having a look at it under a microscope or in a petri dish or with a magnifying glass. Where are you? Where are you? It's not there. Oh, isn't that interesting? So, all of these emotions we feel. Well, where is it? Is it in the heart? Close your eyes, go to the heart area, ask, what's the heart? It's a muscle, pumping blood. Is that me? No. Well, isn't this interesting? Isn't this interesting? You can't find it anywhere, and yet you take it all so personally. So those kind of investigations weaken the delusion and ripen the mind for vipassana insight, where vipassana insight is where you see with direct perception on a deeper level of mind it's not self. But contemplating not self helps to bring that to fruition. So, yeah.
Dear Venerable Sir, during the process of meditation on daily basis, how can we identify the level of improvement and development of mental state we achieved as a result?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that clearly. How can you?
During the process of meditation on daily basis, how can we identify the level of improvement and development of mental state we achieved as a result?
So how to assess whether your daily practice is getting results, and how to gauge those results. This is tricky, and it's a good question. So what can happen with meditators is that as your mind gets more sensitive and you're paying more attention to your mind, it can appear that there's more greed, hatred and delusion than before, because you weren't noticing it before. Or you might have habits of justifying it rather than having a look at what it actually is. And so I think one of the best ways to gauge whether or not one's practice is having benefits is, are you less reactive? Are you more patient? Are you more truthful? These kind of qualities. So if we might have a habit of reactivity, a certain type of greed that we experience that we always fulfill, a certain type of aversion that we experience that we always act out, because that's a deep habit. And so what happens is, if your mindfulness is getting better, you might be halfway through saying the unskillful thing that you know isn't helpful, and you might be able to just stop yourself. Stop. Whereas in the past you couldn't stop yourself. In the future you might just say a few words, and then you tell yourself to stop more quickly. And as you continue to gain momentum in practice, your clarity, awareness, sense of mindfulness with clear comprehension improves. You're about to say it and you can stop yourself. Don't say that. Or don't say it in this way, or don't say it at this time. And you begin to be able to think, what would be is it useful to say it? Is it not useful to say it? Is there a better way to say it? Is there a better time to say it? You start to have a lot more space and a lot more choice about the way you react and whether you react. I think this is a real sign of development. It takes time as well, but most people can see that just as a result of a half an hour or 45 minutes of daily meditation practice, you do develop more truthfulness around the way you use your mind and your speech and your body, and you are able to restrain yourself from some of the unskillfulness, and you're able to set some boundaries or some goals, like, I won't do this anymore. You're able to start training yourself, rather than being having an untrained mind. You're able to start training your mind. Then with regards to peacefulness, like I was saying, if you experience a couple of minutes of thinking, but you're not completely identified with it, you're able to pull back from it to some degree. Not believing your thoughts, this is another sign of development. Whereas in the past you identified with it and you believed it. Now it's like, it's a thought. You recognize a skillful thought, an unskillful thought, a neutral thought. This is also growth. And then hopefully one starts to experience periods of peacefulness. That might just be 5 to 10 minutes. And then after a few years, it would normally be the case that what started as 5 minutes of peacefulness would become 20 minutes of peacefulness. If you want better results than that, and that 20 minutes of peacefulness is really important, because those moments of having a sense of clarity, centeredness, presence of mind, that's what you're going to take into your daily life. That's when you're kind of like, you take the analogy of a mobile phone, that's when you're charging your battery. And then you're able to use it throughout the day. But if you don't charge the battery, it's going to run out. And you're not going to have the necessary energy to maintain the clarity. If you want greater results than that, realistically, you have to meditate more often. So when you really see the benefits of meditation, that shouldn't be such a problem. When you see that you suffer less and you're experiencing more contentment, then you can have a look at the way you're using your time, and you can identify ways that you're wasting time, most people do, and stop doing that and add more meditation. Ideally, every morning, every afternoon, and every evening would be ideal, because clarity is something that needs to be generated. And if you generate it once a day, you'll find that by mid-afternoon there's not much left. Or if you wait till the end of the day to meditate, you'll be sleepy. By the time you sleep for 7 hours, you wake up, there's not going to be much clarity left. But if you can, 45 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon, half an hour before sleeping, most people will find a huge difference in the level of clarity that they have, and less reactivity, if you can do that. You might want to do it for a period of time and just see, is it true? If I meditate 3 times a day, is there a lot more clarity and less reactivity? And do those peaceful periods become longer and deepen? I've been talking for an hour and a half, and we're going to do a guided meditation. How many more questions are there?
During my meditation of Maitri Bhavana...
Huh? Sorry? 4 more questions, okay. Only one easy ones.
Dear Venerable Sir,
Yes.
during my meditation of Maitri Bhavana, I see lot of incident, situation mentally, which I have never experienced in day-to-day life. What is this? Is it an effect of our defilement or any other improvement?
Please tell me, ask me again.
Yeah.
What result?
During my meditation of Maitri Bhavana,
Yes.
I see lot of incident, situation mentally, which I have never experienced in today life.
Right. Yes, so somebody is doing metta bhavana, and they're seeing a lot of visual phenomenon, scenes in their mind's eye. Is this defilement? Is there so? Some people's minds have that experience, and some people don't. So I think it's important to understand that it's one type of normal. The problem is if one gets fascinated with it. So, we all have a capacity to imagine, and we all have the capacity to dream, we all have a capacity to fantasize. So the mind does have that ability to create pictures. Is it flashes of somewhere else? Is it flashes of past lives? Who knows? But the point is, when you're doing metta bhavana, you're doing metta bhavana. So the point is, that's not important. You don't give your interest to it. So you're just aware of it like you would be aware of other sights, or aware of sounds like you'd be aware of other sounds, but you don't give your interest to them. And you stay with whatever your meditation object is. So if your meditation object is breath, you just keep giving the interest to the breath, and you don't pay attention. You can see them. I'm a person that also has some of these visual phenomenon. So I notice them, and then I drop them. I notice it and I drop it. I notice it and I drop it, and I can continue giving my awareness to the breath. And after the meditation, there might be a recollection of, I saw such and such. Sometimes it has a meaning, sometimes it doesn't. And I just, sometimes it appears to have a meaning or a message, sometimes it doesn't, and I just see it as one more piece of information that I don't believe completely or disbelieve. But that's, you train yourself how to relate to these phenomena, so aware of it, and don't give it any more unnecessary attention. But don't worry about it either. Some people's minds are dynamic and visual, other people's aren't. So
Dear Venerable Sir, when I go to bed, I usually see my breath and try to pay attention to it. Is it good or will it negatively affect when I do meditation at the cross-legged sitting position?
No, I think it's a very good thing to do. To go to sleep being aware of the in and out breathing. So you don't just practice breath awareness while you're doing your formal meditation. You try to keep picking it up throughout the day when you are able to, in traffic jams, while listening to other people, while falling asleep. You'll probably find that you'll have more peaceful sleep if you fall asleep with more mindfulness. It's a good thing to do. Lord Buddha does recommend doing loving kindness as you fall asleep. So breathing in, you could also, may I be well. Breathing out, may all beings be well. Breathing in, may I be happy. Breathing out, may all beings be happy. People who do that tend to sleep better and have no bad dreams. So.
Dear Venerable Sir, how long one should practice meditation to achieve samadhi state of mind? May I know a program or meditation schedule in order to achieve that state?
Yeah, so how long does one have to practice in order to develop genuine samadhi? The answer to this question is lifetimes. What we don't know is how many lives we already did. So that's what we don't know. So, but what I think is what I just said. If you have a genuine aspiration to truly develop samadhi, samma samadhi within this lifetime, you want to be thinking about 3 times a day, realistically, for at least 45 minutes, and periods of retreat as well. 10-day retreats when you can. Then I'd say it's likely you'll develop some samadhi. How much and how deep really does depend on past practice as well. And so it's good not to have a time frame. It's good to have the aspiration. That's the Pali word for that is chanda. You need aspiration. The cause of suffering is tanha, which is craving. So there's a differentiation to be made here. Aspiration is wholesome, craving is unwholesome. So you have your aspiration to be peaceful, to develop deep peacefulness. Very important. Then you lay the causes, but you actually can't have a time frame. So Luang Cha uses the analogy of a tree. You plant the tree, you water the tree, the sun shines on the tree. When the fruit comes is none of our business. When you can go and you can shake the trunk, you can pull at the leaves, you can scold the tree, where's the fruit? It doesn't make any difference at all. What does make a difference is that you water it when it needs to be watered, it gets sun shining on it, it grows according to conditions, and it will have flowers, and the flowers will become fruit in their own time. But I think if you're meditating every morning, every afternoon, every evening, doing a couple of 10-day retreats a year, you can expect to develop some samadhi. How much? I don't know. But even some would be good, wouldn't it? So.
Dear Venerable Sir, the
Yeah.
last question.
Last, okay. Nice easy one.
I joined asset engineering last year. From the very first day, I observed that the entire staff start their day of work after meditation session of 15 minutes daily. I consider it is very rare opportunity. Moreover, all members of our group become a member of Dharma Parami and Viswa Parami automatically when we join and when we involve with many meritorious acts on daily basis. We also get the opportunity to introduce deserving cases and help. I have worked with a few reputed companies in Sri Lanka before, but I didn't get any opportunity to meditate like this. During the working hours, my question is why I didn't get this opportunity before. Was it effect of my karma?
Well, so you're working for a company where the boss, as far as I can tell, is very kind and very generous. So I would say that's your rare and special good karma. So the question was, since joining this company, I have the opportunity to meditate. I have the opportunity to be involved in the Viswa Parami and the Dharma Parami projects. And this is rewarding, then the question was, why did I not get this opportunity before? So not getting that opportunity in the corporate world, unfortunately, is normal. Getting this opportunity in the corporate world is rare and special. So that must be the result of previous good karma. That you have a habit of having been generous. You have a habit of having allowed other people opportunities to cultivate their spiritual life. Because of that, you've met with this situation where you're working for a corporation that are companies that allow that, support that, encourage that. So that's your special good karma. And I'm happy for you that you have that special good karma. And I also have a student in Bangkok who asks me to teach her students 4 or 5 times a year. And they also come to things like Katina ceremonies, and they're also fortunate. It is rare. So, yeah, you laid the causes previously to meet with Kalyana Mitta. So this is another thing, is like if one wants to make merit for oneself, then you might get born in a situation where you're wealthy, but you don't have good friends. But this habit that people have in Asia of mentioning to family members and friends the possibility to join in, or involving your work colleagues or your company to do meritorious acts together, then you tend to be born in situations where you will have friends who with like-minded, good character, good traits that want to do good deeds together. So that's all of that is a result of past good actions, I would say. Sadhu.
Dear Venerable Sirs, with that, we have come to the end of the questions and answers sessions.
Yeah.
Venerable Sirs, we offer our honor and gratitude to both of you for the very valuable explanations, advices, and guidance given to make this questions and answers session a very successful and fruitful one.
Sadhu.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I'm going to lead you in a guided meditation now, but I'm going to ask you to stand up for 2 minutes, because I'm sure your legs are sore. You can shake your arms and legs if you like. So, okay, so please sit down. So sitting with a fairly straight back, not too rigid, but also not slumping over. Closing your eyes. And take a couple of deep breaths. Breathe in deeply. Breathing out. Breathing out any tension. Couple more deep breaths, just breathing in deeply. Bringing in fresh energy, arriving in the new moment. And breathing out, putting the past down. And now you come to place the awareness on knowing the feelings of in and out breathing. I like to start by encouraging people to notice the entire breath. That means from the nose into the chest, and then as the abdomen area expands, noticing that whole in-breath and then the whole out-breath from the abdomen contracting, breath energy, feelings of breath passing, flowing through the chest and out the nose. Just trying to know that beginning, middle and end of an in-breath, beginning, middle and end of an out-breath. And just do that for a couple of minutes. And knowing the natural breath, the feelings involved in natural breathing, nose, chest, abdomen, abdomen, chest, nose. Now you might be able to observe that there is one area where these feelings of the breath are more distinct. For some people that's the area of the lip between just below the nostrils, the upper lip there. For other people it's the abdomen. It's more easy to notice that sense of expansion and contraction in the abdomen area. For other people it's the chest. So for now, just choose which of those three areas that you will observe the feelings of the breathing. And then try to make that the center of the awareness, the place where you give the interest. And similarly, noticing the beginning, middle and end of an in-breath, beginning, middle and end of an out-breath. In that one area. In the Thai tradition, we are also using the word Buddho. The Buddha was awake, aware, enlightened. So this word, very powerful, synonymous with mindfulness and a positive affirmation as to our potential. So it's a wonderful couple of phrases to use in conjunction with meditation. And when you use thought in this way, it helps restrain the thinking. So on the in-breath you make a gentle mental recitation, Bud. And on the out-breath, the gentle mental recitation, Do. Breathing in, Bud. Breathing out, Do. Bud. Do. Trying to be aware of the feelings of the breathing in the one area that you selected. And try to know the beginning, middle and end of an in-breath, the space in between, the beginning, middle and end of an out-breath, and another space. Breathing in, Bud. Breathing out, Do. recognizing that it's normal to have some thinking, but having a different attitude, a different relationship to thought, trying to simply know a thought as a thought, not to pick it up, not to follow along with it, coming back again and again to knowing the feelings of the in and out breathing, the natural breath. Just aware of the natural breath as it is, coming into the body, leaving the body, giving yourself the opportunity to rest, or not to have to be somebody, no one to be, nowhere to go, nothing to do, just resting in the present moment, using the breath as your object of meditation, aware of the feelings, one in breath, one out breath. Breathing in put, breathing out do. Oftentimes in ordinary life there's a sense of looking at things, listening to things, tasting things. In meditation you're simply aware of noise. Any images that come up in the mind, simply aware of visual phenomena, but not looking, not listening, simply aware of hearing, aware of seeing, aware of smelling, giving the interest to the feeling of the breath. Breathing in put, knowing the feelings, beginning, middle and end of an in-breath, and breathing out do, knowing those feelings involved with the out-breath. Even in the spaces in between the breathing, we try to hold that awareness within the body, trying to be still, not running after thoughts about the past, thoughts about the future, thoughts about work, thoughts about family, thoughts about other places, other people. Simply coming back into the very center of experience, trying to rest, giving interest, giving care to the sensations of the breathing. you might find that when the mind doesn't flow out into concepts and perceptions of the world, thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, thoughts of other people, that a sense of presence develops, a sense of presence of mind, of clarity, and we just allow the mind to be nourished by that presence of mind, awareness, clear awareness, resting with the awareness of breathing. Like to spend the last few minutes of the meditation doing some metta practice, maitri bhavana. So bringing your awareness to the area of the chest, aware of when the breath is coming in, aware when the breath is leaving. In general, when we're doing breath meditation, we're giving ourselves a break from being a self, having a personality and ego, attending to thoughts, allowing the mind to simply rest. But since we do live in a complicated world with a lot of demands, and since we have to steward a healthy functioning of the self in society, then loving kindness is helpful, necessary even. So here we allow thoughts of loving kindness directed at the self, conventional self. One good way to get the heart of loving kindness to open is one simply makes a honest inquiry, considering your life. Are there any challenges, any irritations, any painful phenomenon, worries about family, worries about work, worries about health, worries about society, worries about safety, etc. And basically everybody still has some worries, some suffering, and so you just acknowledge that. Here is a being not yet liberated from samsara, with challenges. And so you open your heart with kindness towards that experience. In acknowledging that there is suffering, we wish ourselves well. And so we do this in conjunction with the breathing. And breathing in, make the wish, may I be well. And breathing out, make the wish, may I be happy. When we make these wishes, we try to generate a feeling of goodwill, friendliness, just like you would towards your best friend or a close relative. If somebody came to you with some suffering, some concerns, you'd listen with care, you'd express some kindness. So you're offering that faculty, that capacity to one's own experience, opening the heart with kindness, breathing in, may I be well, breathing out, may I be happy. Another good place to start is with a quality of acceptance. So oftentimes there's judgments. We wish we were better, we wish we were other than what we are. There can be quite a bit of fault finding. So we don't do that. with loving kindness. It's not that we can't make improvements, it's just that while doing loving kindness we allow things to be exactly as they are, a quality of loving acceptance. You allow this body, allow this mind just as it is. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. I allow this experience exactly as it is. And then allow warmth, loving friendliness, loving kindness, unconditional love, goodwill. Allow that warm, beautiful human emotion to arise and radiate in the heart area, and bathing that chest area with warmth. And breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. With loving kindness practice, it's important to establish loving kindness for oneself as the foundation, but then we include more beings. So just like to encourage people to acknowledge that everyone in the room has good intentions, wants to develop themselves, wants to have less suffering, wants to experience more peace, more happiness. And so we include them in our Maitri Bhavana, and breathing in, generating the warmth of goodwill to oneself, may I be well. And breathing out, may everybody in this room today, may they be well, may they be happy. And breathing in, generating the goodwill inwardly, feeling that heart, chest area. And breathing out, radiating that warmth, the loving kindness outwards. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may everybody here today, may they be well. Breathing in, may I be happy. And breathing out, may everybody here today be happy. We have to give some thought to what it would mean to be well, what it would mean to be happy. So may we maintain a skillful focus, may we act in ways that support well-being. May I be well. In doing that, may I experience the result of that. May I be happy. And may everybody who's come today interested in cultivating their minds, cultivating the wholesome, relinquishing the unwholesome, and may they be successful. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may everybody here today be well. Breathing in, may I be happy. Breathing out, may everybody here today be happy. With loving kindness, it doesn't mean that you have to like people. It doesn't mean that they don't have faults. It just means that you wish them well from the bottom of your heart. It doesn't cost anything. Produces great karma for you. It's a pleasant emotion. It can become a type of samadhi. It helps you to purify your mind. So it's great to give yourself wholeheartedly to this cultivation. And breathing in, may I be well, may I be happy. Breathing out, may everybody here today be well, may they be happy. May they be safe, may they be free from harm. for the last minute, consider all beings. All beings in their own way are trying to be happy. Some of them very deluded, but nonetheless, people behave the way they behave because they're trying to be happy. And so we wish that people be truly well, be truly happy. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may all beings be well. Breathing in, may I be happy. And breathing out, may all beings be happy. And now just coming back to the awareness of breathing. Breathing in Put, and breathing out Do. Just knowing those feelings, allowing the mind to rest. Just meditate for a minute or so. Breathing in, aware of the in-breath, and breathing out, aware of the out-breath. Okay, so we've been meditating for about 25 minutes. You might end it there. You can open your eyes when you're ready. Okay, may I ask who feels more peaceful now than they did 25 minutes ago? Please raise your hands. Anybody? Very good.
Dear members of Viswa Parami Trust, we have now come to the end of this variable and successful session of meditation.
Most Venerable Ajahn Achalo Thero, Most Venerable Ajahn Pavro Thero, and the members of Viswa Parami Foundation. It is my privilege to deliver the word of thanks at the end of this very valuable meditation session, which will definitely act as an eye-opener to all of us to move forward in the path of meditation. Dear Venerable Sirs, I suppose what you have preached today will make a positive change in our lives, including me. All the clarifications, guidance, and instructions which we received today are a blessing and an inspiration for all of us. Almost every word that you uttered addressed our hearts and will enable us to become aware of Buddhist concepts in the true sense. Once again, Most Venerable Sirs, thank you very much for spending your very valuable time for us, clear our doubts, and lay a very strong foundation which will facilitate for us to practice meditation in our day-to-day lives in an effective way. May this very valuable session of meditation inspire the members of Viswa Parami Foundation to enrich their lives through the practice of Dharma. May Triple Gem bless you all. Theruvan Saranai.
Satu, satu, satu. Theruvan Saranai.